All right, so in the last lesson, we put together our payment page. And now in this lesson, we're going to learn what constraints are. So essentially, up until now, we've been making our designs here, assuming that they'll always be run on an iPhone 11 size. And we've been using only one size for our frames here. In other words, we've been placing our layers and objects here, assuming that it will only be run on an iPhone 11 display. So let's say the client at some point decides to design or see their designs on an iPhone 11 Pro Max here. And as you can see, not much will happen. The frame will just expand, but our designs will stay the same size. And again, that's because we've been designing it in relation to only an iPhone 11 Pro size here. So that's where constraints come in. Constraints allow us to make our designs responsive so they work no matter what frame or what environment they're in. In order to add constraints here, first let's go ahead and just undo that so we have our original size here. And we're going to focus on our login page first. So I'm just going to zoom in using Z and scroll here. So let's go ahead and just focus on adding constraints to this page, and then we'll go ahead and add it everywhere else as well. But let's first understand what constraints are. So with any object selected, you can access constraints by going to the properties panel here and then finding constraints. You can see right now by default, I have a constraint of top and left. And you can see it's top left because these two markers here on the constraint are blue and the other ones are just black. So this field here is being constrained to the left and the top, which is by default what happens with every object. But in fact, what we want to do is go ahead and constrain it to the left and the right here so that if the frame gets bigger or smaller, the field will react to that. So right now, if I make my frame smaller, the field won't react to that. So in order to make it react and properly size depending on the screen size here, let's go ahead and have it selected and then go over here. Let's remove the top constraint. So let's remove the top constraint by going here and just doing center, because we want to keep this element in the center of our page and not necessarily constrained by the top. And then let's go ahead and also do left and right here. So now to actually see that in action, I'm going to resize my frame, making it smaller. And now you'll notice my field is actually resizing here, except there's a little something weird going on with this icon over here. So let's go ahead and add some constraint to this icon as well. The elements of a group themselves have certain constraints to it that you can also change. So if I double click into here to select my icon, and you'll notice it has a left and right constraint, but for the icon itself, we just want to do a left constraint because we just want to constrain it to the left side of this field and not the right. And so now if I resize my frame, you see it works as it should. So let's go ahead and apply those constraints to some of the elements in this page, and we'll go ahead and then apply it to other pages as well. Again, let's work our way from the top to the bottom. So let's do this button here. We want to do a top and a right constraint here because we want that button to be constrained to the right side and not the left. Our logo here should just remain in the center. And let's actually make this center as well. Let's go to the password group and make it left and right and center. And then again, jump in here and make that change to be only left for our icon here. Forgot password should be constrained to the right and center. The login button should have a constraint of left and right, and again center in terms of the vertical constraint. Let's go ahead and just multi-select by using shift all of these components here, all of these objects here, because they're going to have the same constraint. We're going to do left and right, and then we're going to do center. Except for this terms here, we want to go ahead and click this one and do a bottom constraint because we want it to actually stick to the bottom. I think we just forgot one thing. Let's open our layers panel here. If you remember, we locked our background layer, so we can't edit it until we go into our layers and then unlock it. And for my background here, make sure you have it selected. We want to do a constraint of left and right and top and bottom. So this way it's filling the whole size of the screen. So now I'm going to lock it again and go ahead and collapse my frame. So now if the client, let's say, decides to go with the iPhone 11 Pro Max for their designs here, they can do that. And boom, as you can see, the frame is completely responsive and it resized for that iPhone size. And then if I go ahead and change the frame, let's say to an iPad mini even, you can see it does work. Although you'd probably want to make some tweaks, such as resizing these fields and buttons because that's way too large for an iPad app. But here we're just designing for mobiles. So let's go ahead and just hit Command Z and then go ahead and select the frame and make sure we choose the iPhone 11 Pro here, iPhone 11 Pro here. And I'm just going to go ahead and put this back here. That looks good. Cool. So as an exercise, I want you to go ahead and apply those constraints to the other pages that we have here. So go ahead and as an experiment, apply those constraints to the tutorial pages as well as your payment page. And then in the next lesson, we'll do it together as well.